I found that interview really scary because I've had to do it. It's like I'm being questioned.
Yeah.
The way the questions were coming up, he was not polite.
Yeah, as long as you've got like an Excel sheet, so you've got a system. A
Yeah.
system could be anything. It doesn't have to be a formal software.
Yeah.
Officially, there's no ratio. Okay.
Right.
Officially, there's no limit to the number of people you can sponsor either. It was made too easy. You and I could set up a company, ABC Care, and say, I'm a care company. Yeah, we need 70 carers. That's modern day slavery. Right? What are you going to do now? If you've got to pay for it, don't do it. Because you're bringing yourself down on the social ladder as well. Generally, just compliance. Do you have employment contracts? Do you carry out right to work checks for your employees, even if you don't have any overseas workers? Unfortunately, it's usually with our own community we face that. They're going to get an audit. I'm telling you, you're going to get an audit. My name's Jay. I'm the managing director of Rove Legal. Feel free to get in touch.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Social Untold. Today we have Jay Moghal with us. Jay Moghal is the founder of Rove Legal, and he has over 18 years or 20 years of experience in immigration, business law, and advising companies on sponsored licensing compliance, strategic immigration, and so on. So let's hear it from him. Jay,
Hello.
Hello, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming on such a hot day, but
I know. No, thank you. Thank you for the invite. And it's a pleasure to be here.
So, Jay, was my introduction okay?
Yeah,
Good?
it's good. Yeah. I mean, I've been in immigration for 20 odd years. Been qualified for the most part of that period. Obviously, there was a training period involved in the beginning.
Mhm.
And I've kind of transitioned to corporate immigration world. I mean, when I started off, we did everything. There was detention and there was student work and there was asylum seekers. Back then, I don't know if you remember, but there was appeals and highly skilled migrant program. And so I've seen the transition of the different stages of immigration from a Labour government to a Conservative government back to a Labour government.
Wow.
So it's been a bit of a journey, yeah.
So, and now, how do you see those changes? I mean, do you see it? Have there been improvements, or have they?
I mean, look, when I look at the changes over the last 20 years, for example, there's always you see this roller coaster, right? Because the government can never make their mind up. And let's not forget Brexit in between all of this as well, right? Because this, and I mean, when I first started off, we had the highly skilled migrant program was very popular in the early 2000s. And back then, the government was saying we need highly skilled migrants. Okay, we welcome migrants, and that was the general feeling. Okay, so I think the courts, the Home Office officials, the caseworkers that are looking at your cases, they all take a cue from what the messaging is at the top, right? And whilst we've had this anti-immigrant rhetoric throughout this whole period, the government stance is always, you get small messages. And I think initially, back then, the messaging was we need highly skilled migrants. And then, we've got too many now. And these aren't really highly skilled migrants. These are, they're people coming in and they're abusing the system. And then this whole abusing the system piece comes in. And so they knew they had to make some changes. So in 2012, they didn't really change this, but they changed the highly skilled to a tier 1 general. So not really much change because they still realized, okay, there's negative public opinion, but we still need these people to come in. And so they changed the rules on family immigration, for example. So they they added the annual salary to 18,600 in 2012. It didn't exist before that, right? So they hit one area, but they didn't hit anything else. And then slowly we had rights of appeal. Those rights of appeal are now at a stage where you can't really appeal much, but back then you could appeal more or less anything.
It's the time that it takes and the money that it costs to do the appeal.
Of course. I mean, look, you can't really appeal much now, and even the appeals that you can do, it does take a year and it is quite expensive. But back then, if you were refused as a skilled worker, for example, if you refused a tier 1 general, you could appeal that and you would generally succeed. Okay, because and case law has involved and everything's involved. And so we had this anti-immigrant rhetoric again. introduce Brexit.
Sorry, I'm cutting you up, but just a question on the anti-immigrant rhetoric thing.
On the what, sorry?
On the anti-immigration, all the campaign that's going on. Now, this is my opinion. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel that they've got it wrong. They are who they want to target are illegal immigrants that are coming in.
That's right.
But instead, what they are focusing on are skilled worker migrations, people who are actually coming here to work.
Yeah.
Am I right in thinking that?
You are. I mean, look, when they are pandering to the far right, it is, you hear these stories about, 10,000 illegal immigrants coming in a day or whatever the number is. And I think it's actually closer to 1,000 people every day. I have a friend that actually works in the Home Office in that particular team who says it is true. Those figures are true. We get about 1,000 people coming in every day. And these people are trained in, they know what they want. They'll name the hotel they want to stay at, and they know what to say. And so there is abuse of the system there. And that is where they need to target things. And that they're the headlines as well. When it comes to skilled migration, and you've got the highly skilled people that are coming in, and because you got to remember, every other legal immigrant can't claim benefits.
No, okay? Absolutely.
If you're a skilled worker, you're a tier 1 entrepreneur, you're a tier 1 general, you're a student, whatever whichever category you're here under, you can't claim benefits.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So there's studies. There's a lot of studies which show that they actually make a net contribution because they're paying. They're paying to come here. They're paying for their health.
Taxpayers, yeah.
They're high taxpayers, so they're paying through their taxes. They're paying before they even enter. They're paying for their health surcharge and all the rest of it, which has just gone up and up, and it's one of the highest in the world right now. So they're making a net contribution. And so when they attack these legal routes, it doesn't make any sense.
So how do you see this impacting businesses? I mean,
it's had a big impact. I'd say. Look, every time the rules change, as immigration lawyers, like I said, we see it and we see the ups and downs, right? And every time there's a change, we don't panic. We don't say, "Oh my God, this is the end of what are we going to do for work now?" Yeah. Right? Because something else happens. When Brexit happened, we were thinking, what does this mean for for us as immigration lawyers? What does it mean? And in fact, what it's meant is an increase in our work because businesses still want to hire workers from Europe. There's certain industries, hospitality industry, construction industry, where they rely heavily on workers from the EU, right? And so what did the government do? They realized this. They realized, hold on a second, where are these industries going to get? And there's a lot of lobbying from these particular industries, right? And so they wonder where are these workers going to come from? So what do? They decrease the skill level required under the skilled worker route from an NQF level 6 to an NQF level 3. So now, and what that generally means is previously you could only sponsor workers if they were on a bachelor level role.
Yeah.
But post Brexit, when they introduced the changes, what do? They made applying for a license easier. They got rid of the resident labor market test, which was basically before you hire somebody, you had to prove if a company wanted to hire somebody from overseas, you had to prove that you tried to recruit someone locally. And that was quite specific in the way that they did it. You have to advertise on Job Center. You had to advertise in a national newspaper or an industry-specific magazine or website. And you had to run that ad for 28 days at least and show the Home Office that, look, we tried, we couldn't find anybody. This was the most skilled person that we had, and that's why we want to hire them. They changed that because they said, okay, look, we need people to come from Europe. We need to make it easier for businesses. So what are we going to do? We're going to introduce things like bricklayers and hotel managers and restaurant chefs and all of these kind of lower level positions. You can hire under these roles and you don't have to advertise. You just have to have a license. We'll give you these licenses and you go ahead and sponsor people. There'll be reduced salaries and they reduce the salary rate. Okay. So they did all of this because there was a need, okay? And what we've seen since then is a huge increase in the sponsor license applications, right? Because where we had 8,000 employers on the register, we now have over 100,000.
So a question there, you've mentioned a few industries. Now, when we go on to look at the shortage of occupation list, those areas of work and those job titles are not listed on there. Is there a reason why?
Because I guess if you what the way that the rules were written was that the roles within the shortage occupation list were exempt from a higher salary threshold.
Okay.
They were also they're also qualified for a lower immigration fee. So I guess what they wanted to do was not include those roles within that list. And again, these lists they're not done by the Home Office. It's the Migration Advisory Committee that advises the government on what roles they feel actually have that the UK actually has a shortage in. And I think right now it's just literally scientists, biochemists, and that kind of thing. They used to have IT on it, but IT is no longer on it either. They used to, yeah. And I think again, what happened was, and this was a change in I think April this year or April last year, I can't remember now. But they changed the shortage occupation list to an immigration salary list. I mean, they changed the name of it essentially, and they reduced the roles. One of the roles you mentioned, IT, one of the roles that was previously on there was, I think, one of a graphic designer or something. Yeah. Right. But you had software developer and then you had other IT specialists. One of those was on the shortage occupation, the other wasn't. Right. And someone with and the employer gets to choose which category which SOC code they choose. And they would obviously choose the one on the shortage occupation list because you could pay a lower salary and you would also qualify for a reduced fee. So I think to avoid those kind of gray areas, they got rid of those roles, and now, like I said, the immigration salary list is quite specific. They even took off nurses recently as well. So yeah.
Okay. So now, coming back to yourselves and your services, how do you see yourself bridging between businesses and immigration and the law? Your organization.
So our organization has kind of had to pivot a little bit because previously we had a lot of, like I said, we had a lot of categories under which applicants could apply under, right? You had the tier 1 entrepreneur, which required an investment. So this was a businessman, say overseas, they could bring in £200,000, invest in a business here or set up a business. You had that. Then you had the investor visa, an investment of £2 million. So you had a high net worth individual overseas that was perhaps looking to come here and retire. And again, these aren't the people that you want to be targeting, because these people are millionaires bringing in money here, investing it here, spending money while they're here, right? Because a lot of these guys that come here, so guys on the entrepreneur visa or the investor visa, they're spending millions of pounds when they come here, right? They're buying houses, the kids are going to private schools, and they're living in, central London, and they're spending all their money here. But again, the investor visa, for example, was closed because of political reasons when the Russia-Ukraine war happened. A lot of Russians were applying, and we don't really like Russians, and so there were concerns about the veracity of the source of the funds and whether they were legitimate funds and all these kinds of things. Even though banks, before you apply, you get that 2 million. It's got to hit a UK account, and before it hits a UK account, the banks carry out every kind of due diligence and KYC, right? But still, it was a political decision, and they closed these routes. And what we're left with now, essentially, for the last few years, has literally been the skilled worker route, where only a business can more or less sponsor. And there's the global talent and the innovator founder, and we had the sole rep for a while, and I'll talk about those, but where we are today is that we're in a position where realistically the only option we have is a skilled worker visa where businesses are sponsoring workers. And so we had to we were traditionally, previously, I had a lot of high net worth clients from the Middle East, and so we had to pivot our business and focus our energies on dealing with our client base is now UK corporates, UK clients,
so
right? So that's where we are. Yeah.
So what is there for businesses, established businesses who would like to work and operate in UK and have their second branches or have their second offices in UK?
So you've got, and we still get a lot of that. The UK has always been a hub for American companies, especially post Brexit. They toyed with Ireland, and some companies have Ireland offices, but a lot of UK and now European companies as well. You've got a lot of US companies, a lot of European companies that want to set up branches in the UK, and they do that. How they've done that before, they set up entities in the UK. They usually will have a UK based director. They will have a UK based team, and if they want to then sponsor workers from overseas or transfer workers from their overseas work, they use the skilled worker route, and I mean we've got a scale up visa as well now. And the difference between the global mobility scale up visa and the regular skilled worker sponsor license visa is that if you've got a business where you haven't yet set up in the UK, so most businesses, most established businesses, and this is my advice to them as well, is set up operations first.
Okay.
So say I'm a director of an overseas business, and I want to come to the UK to spearhead the growth in the UK. I would advise, or a lawyer should advise me not to apply under the scale up route and say, I'm going to set up and provide the Home Office with a business plan and say, look, I'm going to set up a company. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to hire 25 people. But I need to be in the UK to do this because that's limited. You get a limited license for 1 or 2 years. During those 1 or 2 years, you've got to come here, you've got to establish the company, you've got to set it up, you've got to get some employees. You've then got to transition onto a regular sponsor license and then sponsor yourself for another 4 or 5 years, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And so why not do that from the beginning?
Yeah.
Right. Why not just, company, you can come on a visitor visa, you can set up a company on a visitor visa, you can open up a bank account, you can do all of these things. As long as you've got a UK-based director that's doing this, you can set it up as a subsidiary of your overseas business. You can maintain your shareholding. Okay, you can have the UK entity can have 100% shareholding.
Yeah.
Right. The overseas entity, can have 100% shareholding of the UK entity. All you need is a UK-based director that can then set up operations for you, get things going under your direction. Okay. You can come in and out on a visitor visa to oversee that growth. Give it 6 months, give it 12 months. Let's see the business grow. And by this point, you've got a track record. You've got a director, you've got bank accounts, you've registered with HMRC, you've got an office, you're VAT registered potentially. Yeah. So you've got all of these things and you've got an operating business and you potentially got some employees in the UK. And now you can turn around to the Home Office and say, look, this is who we are. Here's our website. We're a subsidiary of an overseas company. We've got operations in A, B, C, D countries. And now we also have operations in the UK. We currently have 5 members of staff or whatever it is. And we'd like to apply for a sponsor license in order for our CEO to come to the UK for 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, whatever the position may be, to oversee the growth of the business.
Okay.
And it's relatively, it's a lot more simpler.
The easier option.
It's a lot more simpler then.
Now, coming to that, where you mentioned where you have UK based staff. Now, what is the ratio?
That's a very good question. That's a very good question. Because
licenses are
officially there's no ratio. Okay. Right. Officially, there's no limit to the number of people you can sponsor either. Okay. So a company with 1 director and 0 employees could potentially get a license and then say, I want to hire 100 people, I want from overseas. Okay. They could potentially do that. Okay. And some companies have done that. Okay. So officially there's no limit. But in the current climate, there is increased scrutiny. So once you have a license, there's 2 things. You have a sponsor license, and every time you want to sponsor a worker, you've got to apply for a certificate of sponsorship. And when that worker is coming from overseas, you have to request that every time.
Yeah.
Okay. So say you wanted to hire 10 in one go, you would request 10 through your system, and the Home Office could come back to you and say, could you explain, please, why do you need 10? Right? Have you tried to recruit anybody? And like I said, there's no requirement for a resident labor market test, but they can ask you these questions. They can say, the questions that they tend to ask nowadays are, send us an up-to-date hierarchy chart. What does your current structure look like? What roles are these people filling? And what are their salaries going to be? How are you going to pay for their salaries? Can you send us your bank statements, for example? If you're a new company.
That was a new one for me because as we were speaking earlier, I went through this process, and on the call, the person had asked me to share the screen and take them through my bank statements, take them through my live banking records.
That's right. Because what they want to establish is whether you as a company can even afford to pay these people that you say that you're going to be sponsoring, right? And they also want to check if you've got existing employees, they also want to check that the employees that you are hiring, that you have already hired, are being paid their stated wages, right? Because as you know, the current minimum salary now is 38,500 for a lot of the roles. In fact, it's a lot higher for some roles. And so they want to know that these people are being paid what you said they were going to be paid, and that you can afford to pay for any other workers that you intend to sponsor in the future.
Okay. So now a Mythbuster sort of, now which you've already broken, that you can essentially be any type of organization or company to have this license. Because previously it was thought that only specialist businesses can have it.
Yeah, no, it's any business. But with, like I said, with the increased scrutiny that we now have, even when we're applying for sponsor license applications, some businesses will definitely face more scrutiny than others. So lower skilled businesses, garages, shops, barbers, car washes, these kinds of these businesses will face scrutiny because they're going to say, well, why
can't you hire locally?
Why can't you hire anybody locally for this? And whilst you could potentially challenge that, right? It's a long and expensive process. I generally haven't. I haven't done those in quite a while now. I mean, I did a 2 or 3 sort of high street shops like last year, but this year I don't think I've done any. Where one was like a bakery and they had a few branches, and so they could justify the need for a chef. But I find it difficult to justify how you would get like a corner shop, for example, and say, I need a shop manager. Unless, and this is the unless that person was already working for you, say on a graduate working visa. Right? And they were already in the UK and been working for you for 6 months. That's justifiable. Okay? Because that person's been in the role, has been doing it for 5-6 months. You trust them. Right? And you say, well,
and there's a
relationship there. But how do you justify saying, I want to, sponsor somebody because from Pakistan, for example? Like, how are you going to justify that? Because what experience does this person have of operating a shop or managing a shop in the UK that you can't do, or you can't find somebody here to do?
So this brings me to another question, and this is more for personal than for the audience here. Now, I've heard there are 2 different types of cause that you can apply for. One, there's a separate one for if you want to hire somebody
in the UK.
And one. So, what are the differences? What are
so that's a good question as well. And not just small. A lot of employers are still completely confused by this. Even large companies, they just cannot get it. There's what you call a defined certificate of sponsorship and an undefined certificate of sponsorship. So, a defined certificate of sponsorship, when you apply for a license, let's talk about the undefined first. When you apply for a license, you generally will have to explain why you want the license and who you want to hire. If you've identified somebody already, say somebody already working for you in the UK that needs sponsorship, you would ask for an undefined certificate of sponsorship. Okay, you would say, I need 1, 2, 3, 5, 10, whatever, however many you need. Okay, and you will put that request in, and generally, if you ask for, I don't know, 5 undefined certificates, you'll probably get 2 or 3. Okay, if you were able to justify it, and those 2 or 3 certificates sit on your sponsor license for a whole year. Every year they are renewed. And if during that year you've assigned 2 or 3, generally speaking, you will get the same amount the next year. And you could always during that next year or in your allocation period, you can request an increase in your allocation. And that request generally takes about 8 to 12 weeks. But you can pay for a fast track and you can get it done within a week, etc. But generally it takes about 8 to 12 weeks. And when you put that request in, they can come back to you and ask you those questions that even for local employees. So I'll give you an example. A lot of care homes. I deal with a lot of care homes, and they are, some of them, one of my clients is quite a large employer. They have 70 care homes across the UK, and they've maybe got about 80 to 100 sponsored workers. And they renew the existing, they need a certificate of sponsorship to renew the existing ones. And also they are constantly recruiting as well. They generally don't recruit from overseas. They generally recruit from within the UK. So people that are either on student dependent visas or graduate working visas. And so generally they require undefined certificates of sponsorship, and we will request, say, 10, 15 in one go. And we generally have to explain why we want that 10. So we will usually say 1, 2, 3, 4 people have their visas expiring in August, September, November, December. So we need 4 for them. And then the other 6, we've got, we've got 70 care homes. We've got, over the course of the spread across, we've got, say, 20 vacant roles at the moment. And we think, we're going to get applications from overseas workers and say, we'll need another 6 to 10 for those people. Okay. So that's the undefined certificates of sponsorship. They get allocated to you for a year, generally renewed automatically. But if they get short, you can always request more. Defined certificate of sponsorship is when you want to sponsor somebody from overseas, a fresh person from overseas. And that request you have to put in every time. So they don't sit on your license. You don't have any spare. Okay. You can only always do one at a time, two at a, I mean, I say two at a time. You can do two for the exact same role.
Okay.
But if they're different roles, then you have to put in each request separately. So larger companies like, say, Ernst & Young or whatever would say, we want 10 accountants. It's the same role. It's the same salary. And they've identified those 10 candidates. Okay. So they can put that request in at once.
Sorry, just a quick question on this. Do those people have to be identified beforehand? Before
you don't put when you are putting in the request, you don't have to put their details in.
Okay.
Okay. You have to put in the details of the role, you have to put in the details of the salary, and you have to put in the details of how long that person will be sponsored for.
Okay.
You don't have to actually put in the details of the actual individual. So once you get that certificate of sponsorship, the defined one, you have to assign it within a certain period. And that then it needs to, when you assign it, it needs to be assigned to a particular individual. That individual then needs to use it within 3 months.
Okay.
And apply for their visa.
Okay. Okay. Fantastic. So now coming up to this, you've discussed this in detail, but one simple question here. Is the application process and the checks, are they just compliance checks, or they're more than just compliance checks? Look, when they're looking at me as an organization, are they looking at just my compliance or overall my business? What are they?
Generally, just compliance. They will look at overall business just to establish whether they consider you a genuine business or not.
Okay.
And that's within the guidance. The guidance says what we want to look at is, one, whether you're a genuine business and whether the role itself on offer is genuine. And so as part of those checks, we will carry out sometimes an audit. Now, most organizations get a license without an audit.
Okay.
An audit will generally take place at some point in their life. But with the amount of sponsors we now have on the register, I mean, we've got 100,000 plus sponsors on the register, and I would say majority of them, I'd say if there was 100,000, I'd say 85,000, 90,000 have probably never had an audit. Okay. If they decided they wanted to start auditing all of these, they're going to start off with the easier ones. Okay.
The smaller ones.
The smaller guys who, from their name, perhaps appear like these are easy targets. I don't know, A and B convenience store, A and B garages. They're probably going to get visits first.
Okay.
And then they'll move their way up. The team is very small. The compliance team is maybe less than 20 people.
Oh, wow.
And so it's physically impossible for them to carry out. And we're talking about businesses nationwide.
Wow.
Okay. These guys are generally, I think they're based in Leeds, and they've probably got a team here in London. But, it's not physically possible for them to. Pre-license audits are a lot more common now.
The
interviews. And generally what they will be looking at are your HR processes. So when we talk about HR processes, they're looking at, do you have employment contracts? Do you carry out right to work checks for your employees, even if, you don't have any overseas workers? Do you carry out, do you take copies of passports for your employees before their employment commences? Do you have a system to check absences? Do you have a system to check, whether someone's turned up to work? And that doesn't necessarily mean every company's got to have like a biometric system for workers that come in, or you've got to have a HR software. You don't have to have that stuff. But I generally recommend HR softwares to small, medium enterprises, because
I found that interview really scary because I've had to do it.
Okay, what was your experience? Go on.
I found it scary in a way that it's like I'm being questioned. The way the questions were coming up and the way the interviewer, I mean, he was, let's say, he was not polite.
They're not trying to be. Yeah.
So and I was under the impression that I will need these systems, but instead what I showed them was, to my surprise, were some Excel sheets with list of the employees on there, timings they come in, timings they go out, their days off sick, and
that's fine, right?
And that was to my surprise, that part of it was completely fine.
Yeah. So look, and people get stuck because I think they find that part difficult as well. But as long as you've got like an Excel sheet and you've got, details of when these workers are coming and going or what days they've taken off, and, you've got a record. So you've got a system. A system could be anything. It doesn't have to be a formal software. A software is good, it's easy because it's good to track and it's easy to show them, right? But that's generally what they're looking for. And then after that, is the genuineness thing. Show us your bank statements, show us your accounts, show us show us client contracts. You know?
This is what they asked me, that if you don't have, do you have any current contracts? At the time I had a couple of contracts. So in the next 6 months, how many new contracts are you expecting? And can you show us some evidence?
And that's difficult to show sometimes because for a small business, I don't know. I don't know if we're going to sign up.
That's where I learned. That's where I lacked, and that's where I failed.
See, and that's potentially challengeable, right? Because there was a case actually recently where, for a care home, where a care home had requested, I don't know, say 70 undefined certificates of sponsorship, and they came back to them and they said, "Show us your local authority councils contracts to show us how many hours of care you are required to provide over the next 6 months." And they said, "Well, it's just a stupid request. We're not going to give you that." Okay. And they refused.
They probably don't know that.
Right. And they refused them because, and again, what if I'm not doing just council? What if I don't have any council contracts? What if I'm private? Yeah. Right. And I've got private contracts, and they were like, no, this is what you have to send. And they challenged that decision and they actually won it. Right. But, it's things like that they are quite intrusive. I had a company where they had these requests and the company was quite reluctant to actually give the information because they said, "Give us details of people that have applied for these positions," and they were concerned from a data protection point of view whether they could forward these CVs on, right? And they were like, "Well, we've got all these CVs and we've got all these passports for these people, but they're not our employees. We didn't hire them, right? We've kept them, but is this okay from a data protection point of view?" I said, "Look, listen, just send them everything. You've got it all there, right?"
Well, I was so like hesitant when he said to me that.
See, my approach generally, my approach with the Home Office is one of a cooperation attitude, right? Give them whatever you can. I had a interesting one recently, and it's not from a sponsor license perspective. It was a tier 1 entrepreneur.
Okay.
And a tier 1 entrepreneur, over the years, it's now a closed route. I think April 25 was the last time somebody in this route could apply for indefinite leave to remain.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so that was their 5 years up. So you've got to apply for indefinite leave to remain. So my client, he's been here for a while, and he applied in November 24. And it's a genuine business. He's a car sales business. He has 2 garages. Both of those sites have maybe in total over 200 cars on site. He has about 12 employees. But not all of them are British or settled workers. And as part of the requirements, you're required to show that you've generated 2 jobs for British people. Or settled workers, indefinite leave, European settled workers are included as well. And so this gentleman, we provided all of his accounts, details of his investments, payroll data, all of this stuff. And they came back with the funniest request in March. They said, "Can you send us," and I've seen this in sponsor license applications.
Okay.
"Can you send us," not for people that are applying for a license, but people that where they audit them after they've been given a license and they sponsored people. This is something we'll come on to. Is, can you give us email correspondence for all of your emails between you and your employees to show that this is the job that they are doing? So if we said we have hired 1 salesman, 1 mechanic, whatever, we want evidence that send us the employment contracts, which I think we did, but they requested again, send us detailed job descriptions, confirmation of their salaries, and confirmation that they are doing the job you're saying that they're doing, right?
It's a strange request.
So this is what they do with sponsored workers. So with sponsored workers, what previously used to happen, and it probably does happen still to some extent now, is it used to happen a lot before because you couldn't sponsor somebody on an NVQ level 3 on a lower skilled role. Now you can. So now it's not that common. But say back then you you have a restaurant and you could only sponsor somebody as guest relations or restaurant manager. You couldn't sponsor a waiter, for example.
Yeah.
And say, for example, you can. Now, I'm not sure if you can, but say, for example, you can, because it's a lower level role. And back then you sponsored someone and you said, yes, I'm hiring a restaurant manager and he's going to be paid, £35,000 because that's what a restaurant manager should be paid. But in fact, this person was a waiter or was a kitchen assistant, right? And was being paid £18,000. They would then come in and they would say, can you show us what this person does? Is there any, and I guess it doesn't work in this example because, this is a physical role, but in an example of an IT worker or something, they would ask for emails and they would show us evidence. You said you were going to hire a software developer. Show us evidence, what software he's developed. What projects is he working on? Right. And so this is where companies would get stuck because they were like, oh shit, he's working as, he's working somewhere else, or he's just delivering pizzas or whatever. Right. And this is where companies would get stuck. But we had this inquiry for this client and we didn't have emails because these guys were mechanics. Why does a mechanic need an email address?
No. Yeah.
Right. He comes into work. There's no biometric system. Right. Comes into work, gets on with the job. And the sales guy, he comes in, he sells cars and he'll give his, he gives a sheet at the end of every month. These are the cars I sold for his, commission and stuff. So we had that kind of stuff. So what we gave them was WhatsApp correspondence.
Oh, wow.
Okay. So I said, look, this guy doesn't have emails. This is a car showroom. All right. He doesn't come in and log in and, to his computer and, here's some of his emails where he's requesting where he's talking to Auto Trader, or where he's requesting parts for some vehicles, or when he's sending an invoice to the British Car Auction Association and all that kind of stuff. Here's all that email stuff. But with his staff, there's a WhatsApp group, there's a group, and then there's personal conversation. So here's snippets, of their stuff. And literally some of the guys were speaking Arabic in there. He's an Arabic guy. And that's the language they speak with each other. I'm not going to translate those texts for you now, right? But you can see they're sending pictures of cars to each other, right? And they're saying, and we hand wrote what the message was saying, 62 plate, it's got 80,000 miles. Shall I get it or not? That kind of stuff. And so that's the kind of stuff we sent to them. And, the application was approved, but I know some lawyers may have taken the approach of, I'm not giving you that because it's not required by the rules. Right?
Would that have worked?
No. I think they would then say, well,
you've got to give what they've asked me to.
Yeah, you've got to give them. You don't have to give them what they're asking for, but I think you've got to find a medium. You've got to find a way to find that middle ground. And so, like I said, my attitude is one of usually cooperation. Okay. So if they say, send us this, I say, look, we haven't got this, but I'll send you this. You like it. You don't like it. We can have a chat later on. Because if they're minded to refuse you on the basis that they don't think you're genuine, then we're going to have to challenge that. Right? Because we know the business is genuine. And when we're challenging that, we're going to give them this evidence. We're going to give the courts all of this evidence to prove that we're genuine. Right? So why let it get to that stage? Right? Just try and, find a ground where we're like, look, we haven't got a HR software, for example. We've got this Excel sheet. It shows you everything you need.
Okay. Now, coming up to that, now, we've mentioned quite a few errors and mistakes people might make. What are the most common, just list of errors?
For sponsor license application?
Yes.
So when you're applying for a sponsor license application, there's a set list of documents that you have to provide. Okay. People generally not include all of them. Okay. And that's immediately the application's refused. So that's the first thing. Make sure you've got all the documents that you need with the application. The other thing that they always ask for, which isn't very clearly listed in the guidance, is a staff hierarchy chart. So send that through. And the reason you're applying for a license, always explain to them why you're applying for a license. And there's no way to do that online on the form, which is why we generally will include a letter and we will explain all of these things. We will explain why they want the license, who they want to hire, if they've identified somebody, if they haven't identified somebody, why they want the license then, right? So you've got to explain that. So people tend to forget that. Sometimes people forget to pay the right fee. So some large companies, for example, if you've got an organization with 15 or more employees and a turnover of 10.2 million or 5 million in the balance sheet, you've got to pay the higher fee. Sometimes people forget to pay that. That's an instant rejection. And then previous non-compliance. I once had an application from, again, an overseas entity, a big Turkish conglomerate. They had set up operations in the UK. They have some UK staff, but the person that they nominated to be the authorizing officer had a previous conviction, which he didn't disclose. And obviously, when you're completing the forms, you have to confirm that the authorizing officer does not have any convictions. They list the convictions, but they also have, discretion to refuse you when you don't. There's other convictions. So obviously, they've listed things like murder and all of that stuff. But if you've got like shoplifting, for example, then that's a big no-no as well, right? So or an undeclared bankruptcy, for example. So again, it's important to have that open line of communication with staff. A lot of my experience, a lot of the time, organizations will come to you and we say, we need this done today. We need this done cheaply. And I say to them, hold your horses. We need to go through your processes. I need to understand what you do. I need to understand that you've got the systems in place. Oh, no, it's so simple. Why are you making it complicated?
Yeah.
And it always, I mean, again, unfortunately, it's usually with our own community we face that, right? So I had an accountancy firm, and they've got 25, 30 employees, so good team. But it's run like a desi operation, and so there may be employment contracts, but some people have employment contracts, other people don't. Some people are being paid different salaries to what's on the employment contract. There's a lot of overseas workers, so some people have right to work checks, other people don't have right to work checks. So I said, listen, hold on a second. Oh, I can do this myself, and I can do this. I said, okay, well, you do realize, you don't have all of your employment contracts. You haven't carried out right to work check for this guy. You've got a student working for you full time. You need to stop that, and then when it took, you have to really fight and argue with them to do the right thing. Luckily, we did that because they had an audit.
Oh, wow.
They had an audit. And again, it's usually we're able to, I would usually say most desi businesses, no matter what industry you're in, will get an audit. They're going to get an audit. It's just as unfortunate as it is, they will, right? And so this accountancy, even though they've got 25, 30 employees, multi-million pound turnover, you're going to get an audit. I'm telling you, you're going to get an audit, right? And so they had an audit. Luckily, they passed it, because they listened in the end and got these things in order. And so when they were asked these questions, they were able to show, yes, we have the pay slips. Yes, we have employment contracts. Yes, we have right to work checks. We have a formal list of absences. And so, yeah, it's those are the kind of things I would suggest. It's not really practical for. It's not sometimes practical for small businesses to do all of this stuff, right? But as long as they're able to answer these questions, I think the biggest question from smaller businesses is, you have, I don't know, 1 or 2 employees. Why do you want to hire somebody from overseas? What's the need? Okay, can you afford to pay the salary, especially now moving forward? So with the changes coming up, we briefly spoke about the white paper and things. With the changes coming up, and it's going to be more difficult. We are going to see difficulty now. We've had that period of, everybody applying within the last 5 years. And we are going to see tougher rules for a while. And then we'll see. I think then we'll see the curve again when the government's going to realize things have died down. We need people here to get this thing going.
That's the question I was going to come to. Now, you as a business owner, as well as doing this, do you think there is still a need?
There's still a need. 100%.
100%.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. I think in a way it's right for them to introduce some level of scrutiny.
Yeah.
It was made too easy, and I'll tell you where the problem occurred, and it's where we'll park the healthcare visa aside. That was one thing that triggered this whole thing off, because they introduced the healthcare visa, during COVID, because there was a genuine need for nurses and healthcare workers in care homes. I don't think they needed to introduce a separate category for this. The general skilled worker route works. They didn't need to identify it as a separate thing. But I think the benefit of it was that you pay a lot. You don't pay any health surcharge.
Yeah.
Applicants don't pay a health surcharge, and the visa application fee is like £284, or was 280.
That just opened the
that, you know, and so it's really cheap, right? And what people were doing, what they've changed obviously since last April, but what people were doing was that you and I could set up a company, ABC Care, and say, I'm a care company and I want to hire, or even law firms could do it. I could say, I want to hire a nurse because I want to hire a nurse, or I want to hire a carer because I want to hire a carer. And I didn't have to be CQC registered or show them any contracts or anything like that, right? And people were just setting up companies and saying, yeah, we need 70 carers. And people were coming in, and they come here and there's no jobs. And so that's one abuse that did occur, and it was terrible.
I also saw agencies, agencies created.
Agencies were doing this. And agencies generally, whilst they can apply for a license to sponsor their own workers, they can't sponsor workers to farm out as agency workers. And that's not just in the healthcare sector. This is everywhere. I mean, the agency's work has been going on for a long time in the IT sector. You had a lot of agencies that would bring in IT workers from India, for example, and then farm them out to larger companies. And they'd pay them a salary, fixed salary, but they'd have a contract to set. And that's prohibited by the rules as well, and always has been. So IT companies face scrutiny for this agency stuff. Healthcare agencies will obviously face similar scrutiny now. But so that was one area of abuse, and we're still recovering from that. Where I think even in the white paper, there's a suggestion they're going to finish the healthcare visa route altogether, in by 2027 or 2028. And then you had the students, the student route. You had students that were coming in and essentially just working not as agency workers, but as subcontractors. So you've got your whole fleet of Uber drivers and Deliveroo guys that would, someone else would have the contract or whatever. I'm not sure exactly how it works, but person A would be getting the salary, but person B would actually be doing the work. And so these companies are now going to face a lot of scrutiny. Are facing scrutiny. One of these larger ones faced a couple of million fine just now for hiring without carrying out right to work checks. Right.
Is this why sometimes when you order Uber, you see somebody else's picture? Somebody else is
delivering, right? And so that's what's happening, because there's this whole subcontracting industry that's going on, and it's specific, I think, particularly in the delivery industry, but also happens in the hospitality industry. Also happens, and this is what it is, right? It's modern day slavery, and this is what they're trying to stop now, because they can't be seen to do that. And so that's the other area of abuse, where they saw, a lot of these students coming in, and they were, whatever means possible, trying to get some form of sponsorship. And so, look, we're going to face, and I think we're already seeing a drop in student numbers. It's already happened. We're already seeing a drop in the care worker visas and their dependents coming in. And another fraud was this whole dependent thing as well, where dependents were coming in where they weren't actually married to the person. They just, whoever bought the visa, these guys were added on as an add-on, turned up at the airport, your husband and wife, and so, they stopped the dependent route as well for care workers in particular. And for other skilled workers, they ask for evidence of your relationship now. So, bills for the last 2 years and that kind of stuff to show that you're a genuine couple. So I think what we will see is the abuse that has occurred, they have targeted it correctly. And I think we will see a reduction. And I think it's a good reduction in a way. It will clear out, it'll make things easier again for genuine employers, because genuine employers are facing difficulties with recruitment. I have one client, they're an interior designer. They had one student that was working for her from Japan, and they had a sponsored worker who was working as a online sales executive. I think she was from China, and she was sponsored in the rules previously, on a graduate working visa, switching over. Both of those workers are now saying that they're scared of the proposed changes, and we were going to get the sponsorships done now so that we could get them under these current rules, because a sales executive doesn't qualify under the new rules. When we're talking about graduate level roles, when we go through the SOC codes, most of the codes starting with 3 are going to, they're going to be gone. And so you're going to be left with,
much smaller
pool of workers that you can actually sponsor. So both of these workers are not going to be this company would not be able to sponsor them if these rules get introduced. And we don't know when they're going to be introduced, but, if they get introduced in October, which is when rules generally get introduced in October or April, if these rules get introduced in October, these people would not be qualifying.
Wow.
So, it will affect businesses. It's going to make life difficult for them. And I think after a period of 1 or 2 years, once we've sifted through this, and once they've made that big win announcement, it's a political decision, right? Because the Farage threat is real.
Yeah.
The Nigel Farage threat is real.
Yeah.
And if they want to stay in power next term, they've got to address
these
issues, and it's a political move. And I think once things die down and once things are cleared up, we still need to figure out what they're going to do about the illegal immigration, which is the point of contention, really.
Yeah.
Yes, these areas of abuse need to counter, but they might be taking things 1 or 2 steps too far. For example, this, I think the lowering of the skills threshold doesn't need to happen. I think they need to make things stricter for students. I think they've already increased the salaries.
Yeah.
And it's already pretty expensive. They don't need to increase the health surcharge.
Yeah.
They don't need to increase the skill surcharge, what they're going to do. The skill surcharge, which currently organizations have to pay, small organizations pay £364 a year for the workers that they sponsored. And the large organizations pay £1,000 a year for the worker they sponsor. So imagine a large organization sponsoring somebody for 5 years on a £70,000 salary. They pay £5,000 for the skill surcharge. They're paying visa application fees. They're paying health surcharge. I have one of my clients is a bank, and they sponsor the dependent family members for the workers as well. So if they've got somebody coming in over for France, coming in as a managing director level, they're being paid a 6-figure salary. This person's got a wife and 5 kids coming in for 5 years. They're paying in excess of £40,000 for this person to come in. And they're bearing that expense. That's fine. But to increase that, it's still already one of the most expensive systems in the world. So I think they're taking things too far by increasing some things. Other things, yes, I think some changes do need to be introduced. I think increased scrutiny on license applications. Yes, sure.
So talking about changes, so there is another change that we haven't discussed, is increasing the 5-year route to a 10-year route. Now, how do you see that? Because I heard a couple of years ago, there was a talk that the 10-year route should not exist.
Yeah.
And now we're introducing...
I think it's overkill. And I think for nationality, sure.
Yeah.
Increase the period. Because again, let's compare it to the rest of the world. If you go to the US, it takes ages to get a green card.
Yeah.
Probably even longer to get a passport. If you go to Germany, again, 8 to 10 years, easy.
It's the cost,
right?
That it involves.
It's the cost. That's it. So they've got to get a balance, right? You can't say to somebody, you've got to stay here for 10 years, right? Which is going to cost you, £50,000-60,000 if you're a small family, right? For those 5 years.
What is it, like £5,000 per application
per application per person, right? It's a crazy amount of money.
And if you're not doing it yourself and you're hiring a
solicitor. And then again, we talk about, let's talk about benefits Britain, right? Your average white man or your local British person, when do they have 10, 20, 30,000 pounds saved up
to pay? Yeah.
Do you and I have 20, 30,000 pounds saved up?
No.
Right? Yeah. Imagine an immigrant family that is here, that is already contributing, okay, is paying taxes like you and I are paying taxes, but on top of that is paying for the healthcare.
Yeah.
And every 2-3 years is going to have to apply for these visas to renew. And is going to have to pay for the healthcare, and is going to have to pay for the visa application fees, and potentially has to use a lawyer, and is going to have to pay £15,000-20,000, right?
That's a lot, and that's every 3 years for 10 years.
It's madness. So no, I don't agree with it. We've had there's a lot of conversation about what is actually going to happen, right? Because this is just a white paper. It's just suggestions. It's not law yet. But I went to a conference last week of other lawyers, and there was a discussion around what's actually going to happen, what's not going to happen, and we think that it's definite that the 10-year route will come in on the skilled worker. There's a really high degree of possibility it's going to happen on the skilled worker route. It's not going to happen for spouses of British people, for example. It's quite likely going to happen on the skilled worker route, but then they're talking about reductions based on your contributions.
Okay.
What are those contributions? Is it charity work? Is it, signing up to national service? Or is it more likely going to be your contributions to taxes, right? National insurance contributions and salary. So someone on a salary of 100K, for example, may be able to qualify in 5 years, but somebody on a salary of 30K is going to take 10 years, It may be that. We don't know, so there's a big disclaimer there. I don't know whether it's going to be that, but this is me guessing. Right? Okay. When they talk about contributions, what do they mean? I think it means financial contributions.
Busy times, stressful times,
stressful time for businesses. And I think, as a business owner, I think we're constantly having it's every 6 months we're having to navigate something or the other, and then
somebody like me. For me, I've just decided I'm not going to make that application again.
Yeah. The sponsor license application,
If I have to hire people to work online, I'll hire them to work online.
Yeah.
But I won't go through that.
It is, yeah, exactly. And it's because it's stressful, and it is, like you said, it's an aggressive, we don't want you here. And like I said, that filters through.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So previously is we want people, so nobody's getting a check. Right? Nobody's getting a check. Everyone's getting a free pass. A law firm could say, I want 70 carers, and sure,
you can have it.
You can have it. But it's that shift now where we're saying we're aggressive and we're going to be carrying out checks. That will change at some point. Again, we'll come to a point in a few years' time where the economy is going to be suffering, and they're going to and the business, the various industries are going to come up, and they're going to lobby, and they're going to say,
I can think of so many, like restaurants, cafes, bars, where you need these people.
You need these
people. And they're not high skilled workers.
And one of the suggestions in the white paper is that they're going to introduce a requirement for businesses to train up local people. Now, again, what does that look like? Does that mean every care home has to have like a training policy in place for training up, or do they have to have an apprenticeship program? What do they have to have?
Exactly. And who's going to pay for that?
And who's going to pay for that? And how is a small business going to do that? How is a small business who has 5-10 employees going to have an apprenticeship program or a training program? Or is it going to be limited to just the larger employers to carry out for the whole of the industry? But why would the larger employers do that for the whole industry?
They won't. They wouldn't.
Right? Because there are certain industries that rely heavily on overseas workers.
Yeah.
Care sector, industry, the construction sector, the hospitality sector, they all rely on it.
Yeah.
Tech sector, sciences, realistically, all of them.
Yeah.
Right?
No, how are you going to cater? I mean, we saw what happened with the lorry drivers.
It's not the responsibility of the industry.
Yeah.
This is and the government likes to shift responsibility. The right to rent checks and the right to work checks. It's all the employer's responsibility. You guys have to do it. You have to do the policing. You have to check whether somebody's got the right to work or somebody can rent.
But they've turned up to work. We don't have to do it, or not,
right?
Yeah.
Right. But it's their job. They've got to check these things, right? And they've got to introduce a training structure for people and identify, our sciences, our industry, maybe universities need to be offering scholarships to students who are going to be studying biomedicine. That's a way of doing it, because education is incredibly expensive, not just for overseas.
For locals, yeah.
For locals, right?
Yeah.
There's a huge drop in people going to university because it's simply not worth carrying that kind of debt anymore, is there?
It's to compare. When I graduated, I had to pay back £12,000 or £13,000,
and now that's
£45,000.
Yes, and that's for local students. Imagine, can you imagine? And so they talk. It's talk, but there's other ways of doing things.
Right. So we are running short out of time. So I'm going to go through the next quick questions. So, Mythbusters, quickly.
Mythbusters, okay.
Yeah. It can salary to have a sponsor license has to be certain level limit on salary.
That's right. So the minimum salary, there's a minimum salary threshold and a general salary threshold. The minimum salary threshold for most roles is 38,500 per annum. And then there's a general threshold as well, which is particular for each role. So each role, say a business development manager, for example, would have to be paid a minimum of £50,000. So in that, if you're sponsoring someone as a business development manager, and this isn't the actual figure, I'm just giving you an example.
I understand.
But say a business development manager, if you're sponsoring someone, you're not paying them 38,500. You have to pay them the minimum general threshold of that role. Okay. And then there's obviously discounts available for certain graduate new entrants, for example, get a discount. Their salary can be reduced, I think, now to 26,000.
Okay.
It is. Yeah.
Okay. So that's true. Next one.
Sorry, it's 29,000.
Okay. Next one. We're too small to sponsor.
No such thing.
As long as you can complete the compliance.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, sponsor license is a burden.
It is.
It is a burden.
It's a responsibility.
I've just said that. I'm not.
It's a responsibility. Yeah. The reality is, even this applies for large sponsors as well as small sponsors. Once you've got a license, once you sponsored the person that you were looking to hire, you're not looking at the sponsor management system again for another 2-3 years, or until you want somebody, right? It's only large employers that are sponsoring regularly on a monthly, quarterly basis that are actively checking the sponsor. You should be. Mm-hmm. But once you've really hired somebody and, that was the only person that you were going to hire and they're here for the next 2-3 years, you're not logging onto the sponsor management system. And as long as that person is doing what you said he was going to doing and he's being paid the salary you said he was going to be paid, it's okay. Okay. If you get an audit, again, they will be checking your, history, whether you carried out the right to work check before hiring, whether you had an interview process, whether you advertised the role, that kind of stuff. And as long as that historical data is still there, you generally should be okay. But it is still, I always say it's a responsibility, not a burden, but a responsibility.
Okay. Now, last question, which should have been somewhere in the middle because we touched upon it quite a lot. Sure. We mentioned audit just now.
Yeah.
We see quite a lot of organizations getting their licenses revoked.
Yeah.
What are the key reasons?
The things I've just mentioned, right?
Or the audit.
So it's usually, they will not usually revoke your license if you've got 1 or 2 minor failures. So if you had your Excel sheet and you forgot to fill in somebody's absence, for example, that's not going to be a biggie. Okay. If everything else was right, if your sponsored workers were being sponsored. When we're talking about revocation, let's talk about, it's mainly people that already have a license. Okay.
Yeah,
it's not.
That's right.
Okay. Yeah. So these people have had a license, might have had it for 1 year, might have had it for 5 years. Right. And they've presumably got sponsored workers. Right. So as long as these sponsored workers are doing what they said you were going to be doing, and they will be interviewed and during an audit, the worker as well as the employer, they're doing what they said they were going to be doing. They have the necessary skill to do the job that they said they were going to be doing. They're being paid what you said they were going to be paid. You haven't charged them as an employer for sponsoring them. Okay. You haven't charged them for the certificate of sponsorship or the license fee or anything like that. You haven't done any of that. You've got an employment contract in place. If you've got all this stuff, you're generally good. People generally get refused with is abuse. Okay.
There are gaps in there.
They're not being paid what they said they were going to be paid for whatever reason. Oh, she was pregnant and, or she had to go to India for 3 months while she had a baby. And then
gaps in the compliance, basically.
Yes, gaps in compliance. I had an IT company recently, and I said, what happened? Again, oh, this worker got pregnant. She went to India to have the baby and she didn't come back for 6 months. And I said, what happened during these 6 months? And did she do any work? Oh, no, she was on, annual leave. And, there's things that you need to report. If the employees change address, you need to make sure you have the up-to-date address. A lot of people fail on that as well. Mm-hmm. They never have an up-to-date contact number because they can come in and they say, where do you live? Oh, I live here. But your HR system says you live here. Mm-hmm. And that's a big no-no because if tomorrow they abscond, you've got to report it to the Home Office and say this worker no longer works here. Mm-hmm. And you're going to give them the old address.
Oh, these notifications that you have to do, is it 3 days or 10 days?
10 days, usually.
10 days.
Most of them is 10 working days. Some of them a bit more, but most of them 10 working days. So if an employee stops working or there's a change in salary, updating the address, change to duties. Most people fail where sometimes, they've not updated the address. a worker has stopped working and they've not
notified
told the Home Office. They have just decided to change the salary and reduced it for whatever reason.
Oh, wow.
Right. They've changed the role and they've not made a new application. They usually will need to make a new application.
Okay.
So if it's within the same occupation code, you can just notify them of the change. But if it changes the whole occupation, you've got to make a new application. And if they do this with a number of employees, sometimes with large employees, if it's just one slip through, no problem. But if it's a pattern, you're getting your license revoked. If it's happening with everybody, you've got 5 people working, all of them have changed their address, 3 of them have got a different salary. One of them, you don't know where they are today. Maybe they're on annual leave. Maybe they're, that's usually the kind of stuff we see.
Okay. So last question. Now this is more for the employees or potential employees. Say there's a person who's been given a job and they said we'll give you work permit or we'll issue a cause. What checks can they do to ensure the company that is giving them the visa or the work permit?
I sometimes get these random emails from people from overseas, right? Can you please check if this is a scam or not? If you've never been in touch with the company, right, and you've paid them some money, it's a scam.
Definitely,
right? That's number one. If you're already in the UK and you've actually interviewed with a company, you will know whether this company is a genuine company or not, right?
I know. So here I'll come up to a unfortunate but a cultural thing, especially in India and Pakistan, where giving money for something in return, even if it's rightfully yours, is okay.
Yeah, right? I know what you mean. Yeah.
Right. Now, for somebody like that, it's normal for them to give money.
Yeah.
Right. Whether it's, I know.
Do you know what the problem is? Do you know what the problem is? As soon as you've done that, as soon as you say it's a genuine company, right? I don't know, a security company or whatever. I don't know, an IT company, right? And they say, yeah, we'll sponsor you, but you've got to pay for it.
Yeah.
Right? You're going to have to pay the license fee. If we hire a lawyer, you're going to have to pay for the lawyer.
And you're
going to have to pay for your fees. And on top of that, you're also going to have to pay me £10,000. Okay. Because I'm doing you a favor.
Yeah.
The thing is, as soon as you've done that, you're in their hands. The ball's in the employer's court. He can tomorrow cancel your sponsorship if he feels like it.
Yeah.
Or he can, I've seen this happen. They've applied for a license. They got the license. They've got the certificate of sponsorship. And at the last minute said, you know what? We're not going to give it to you.
Yeah. You've charged the money.
We're not going to give it to you.
Yeah.
And there's no recourse for you. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
Right? You're going to try and claim it in civil court, but you are also part of something that was,
especially for people who are not even here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, for people who are not here, again, I've seen this happen, family members even. Last year there was a guy who spoke to me and he said, me and my brother, we both came. I think they worked in a furniture store or something. It was a furniture factory or something. Me and my brother both came. We're from a good family. To my uncle, my chacha. My chacha has this business here, and he said, I haven't got any staff, and I need you boys here. This is your business. Da 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 da. Me and your father, etc., etc. It's the same thing. I need to. And okay, they both got sponsored, but you need to cover the expense for it.
Yeah.
And when they came here, he had them living in his house literally a day. You guys must work. You're not getting any wages. Yeah, you're managing the shop. I'm not paying you anything. And you've got to clean the house. You've got to do this. You've got to do whatever my wife says.
That's slavery.
That's modern day slavery. Right. And what are you going to do now?
Yeah.
Right. And the thing is, these guys know they're in a vulnerable position, but they're already in such a vulnerable position that they think this is a way out.
Yeah.
And
they've just got to sustain those 5 years or 6 years.
Yeah. And it's usually not a way out.
No.
It's usually you're at the whatever the employer says, right? Now, when it's a genuine employment and people actually want to hire you, they hire you for your skill and they pay for you and they'll pay for And that's what the Home Office wants, and that's what most businesses will pay for as well, right?
I usually always recommend whoever calls me, because we all get those calls that, oh, this is happening. What do we do? And I'd recommend to them that check if the company is genuine, check if they're on the list. Of they actually have a license to review. They're not asking you to fund it. And then if you have to pay for it, then there's no point. Then most likely there isn't a job. They don't have a job.
They don't have a job. Yeah, if you have, look, I think point blank, if you've got to pay for it, don't do it. I know it's but it's illegal. And not just for the employer. For the employer, they could lose their license. Obviously, they're not going to. But for the employee, it puts them in a really bad position because you're living under this servitude, modern day slavery. You don't know whether you're going to get paid, what you're going to get fed, you're going to get paid. And back in the day when I used to deal with all types of, people in detention, people who had overstayed, I used to get a lot of. Back then, I came on a visit visa and now I can't go back. Please help me. And I used to say, what do you mean you can't go back, man? Come on. How bad are things? Tell me how bad are things?
There's always a way out.
How bad are things? Because if you are from a reasonable family, because you're bringing yourself down on the social ladder as well. This is another point that's actually often underlooked, actually. So say in Pakistan or India, you're a middle-class family. Your parents are working professional jobs. You were potentially working a professional job, and you come here and you sell some land or you sell everything your parents had to come here, and you're going to spend all this money to work for somebody for, I don't know, £5
doctors working on groceries
for £5 an hour, right? And you're going to live this life of servitude for what?
And are you going to get that money back?
You're not getting all that money back. You're not going to get your pride back. And I really do ask them, is it worth it? And then often these people would find another lawyer because they didn't like what I said, right? But it's from my perspective, I'd love to take your money and sell you a story, right? I said, yeah, we can try something with the Home Office. Give me some money and I'll. But I know that I'm going to take this person's hard-earned cash for something that might be a dead end and something that's going to put him in a life of. So I always gave this.
What scares me is they're willing to take that risk.
They're willing to take the risk.
It's because, as I said, I've seen doctors working on grocery stores. And
it's a shame. It's a shame.
Yeah,
it's a shame.
Oh well. Right. On that note, thank you very much.
No problem.
The camera is yours for the audience.
Okay.
If somebody needs help, they need support with their business, how can they reach you?
Sure.
What services can you give them?
Sure. My name's Jay. I'm the managing director of Rove Legal. We're a specialist London-based immigration law firm. Feel free to get in touch. Our email address, which you can probably put in the thing, is inquiries@rovelegal.com. And our telephone number is 0203 146 0900. And Zahir will put it on the on our
description. So all the links for the company, for Jay, will be in the description. If you'd like to ask any questions, please put them in the comments. As always, like, share, subscribe. Thank you very much.
Thank you.